9 bedrooms, 25,000 square feet of hand-made adobe on 150 acres of California hillside, so quiet the outside world simply disappears. A private lake dug into ground where none existed before. A minority stake in a professional basketball team in the city where he grew up broke. Everyone knows the movie star. But almost no one has added up what he actually owns. And the largest piece is not the house. So here is the real question. What does a man buy after fame has handed him everything money can only rent? This is a channel about the wealth, the power, and the quiet legacy of the Black community, told across America, Africa, the Caribbean, and the world. And this is not the version of Will Smith you already know, not the red carpet, not the slap, but the untold one. The story of how a hired performer quietly became a landowner. The Philadelphia Blueprint. He was born in West Philadelphia in 1968 into a working family in a neighborhood called Overbrook. Remember that word, it matters later. As a teenager, he became half of a rap duo, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and in 1989 they won the first Grammy ever awarded to a rap act. He was a millionaire before he could legally rent a car. And then he did what almost every young star does with sudden money. He spent it, and he spent it fast. Cars, jewelry, and a diamond chain with his own nickname spelled across it in stones. But he forgot one thing, and it nearly ended him before it began. He forgot to pay his taxes. By 21, the government said he owed $2.8 million. In his own telling, they wanted $2.8 million, and he had $2.83. He was not rich anymore. He was quietly, completely broke. Here is the lesson he took from that ruin, and it became the operating principle of everything after. Fame depreciates. Ownership compounds. When the television series that saved him began, the government garnished roughly 70% of his paycheck for 3 straight years. He watched a fortune arrive and vanish in the same motion, and he understood something most performers never do. A salary is not wealth. A salary is something you rent from your own labor, and it can be taken. So he made a decision that reshaped his entire life. He would stop selling his time by the hour, and he would start owning the thing the time produced. In 1998, he and his longtime manager, a producer named James Lasseter, founded a company. They named it Overbrook Entertainment, after the neighborhood and the high school back in Philadelphia. That was the moment the actor decided to become an owner. If stories like this one move you, the ones the business pages quietly skip over, take 1 second and subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because there is far more of this fortune still to walk through. Because the money that funded all of it had not even arrived yet. The foundation years. Before he could build, he had to earn the conventional way, and he earned on a scale that is difficult to overstate. His first real film paycheck for a 1993 drama was $500,000. 2 years later, an action comedy called Bad Boys paid him $2 million. Then came the run that made him one of the most bankable actors on the planet. A blockbuster about an alien invasion that turned him into a global name overnight. A film about men in black suits guarding the galaxy from aliens. He became so trusted at the box office that in his strongest years he could command a fee near $20 million a picture. And he was choosy enough about ownership that he famously turned down the lead in one of the most influential science fiction films ever made. Over his career, the movies he starred in would gross more than $7.5 billion at the global box office. Reported estimates place his personal fortune today somewhere between $300 and $375 million, with most trackers landing near $350 million. He is not a billionaire, and this channel will never tell you he is. But hold even that number loosely, because here is what almost every profile gets wrong. That box office money was never the empire. It was the fuel. It was the foundation poured into the ground so that something much heavier could be built on top of it. And what he built on top of it is where the real story begins. The pivot to ownership. An actor of his size could have simply collected a fee, cashed the check, and rolled on to the next film. He refused to live that way. Through Overbrook, he did not just star in movies. He produced them. He owned a piece of them. Films like The Pursuit of Happiness, Hitch, I Am Legend, and later the tennis drama King Richard, the one that finally won him an Oscar, carried his name as producer, not merely as star. He learned to develop projects, control the budgets, and keep a share of the profit on the back end. And that distinction is the entire game. When you are only the actor, one hit pays you once. When you own the production, one hit pays you twice, the salary for the performance and the profit from the thing the salary helped create. Every success now threw off two streams of money instead of one. And once he understood that ownership multiplied money in a way a paycheck never could, he began pointing that same principle at everything, at companies, at equity, and at the single most photographed asset he would ever assemble, a stretch of California hillside that would take 7 years and hundreds of artisans to complete, the Calabasas compound. Tucked into the hills of Calabasas, north of Los Angeles, sits a compound so large that the drivers who pass it on the road rarely understand what they are looking at. The main residence spans roughly 25,000 square feet of adobe-style architecture, spread across 150 acres of private land. It was designed by an architect named Stephen Samuelson, inspired by a home the actor admired in Santa Fe, and it took roughly 7 years and hundreds of skilled artisans to complete. The finished estate was striking enough to earn a feature in Architectural Digest. Inside there are 9 bedrooms, a meditation room, a recording studio where his own daughter recorded a hit single, and an entire cinema wing with a projection booth and a lounge for talking about films after the credits roll. Outside, there is a free-form pool shaped like a lagoon, courts for tennis and basketball and volleyball, and a man-made lake with a small island and a Japanese-style gazebo he reached by walking across a private bridge. He once called that gazebo his favorite place on earth to sit and think. The front door was salvaged from a fort in northern India. The cabinetry was carved from 19th century oak, and the property is so vast, so completely its own world, that the Postal Service assigned it something almost no private home in America has, its own zip code. But a house, however staggering, is still only a house. The heaviest wealth he controls does not sit behind that front door at all. The assets that are not homes. The instinct that separates a wealthy celebrity from a genuine owner is the willingness to put money into things you will never live in and never wear. He was an early investor in a ride-hailing company called Uber, years before it became a household verb, betting on the platform the whole culture would soon depend on. He took a position in Oura, the health wearable that quietly ended up on the fingers of millions. Each of these moves reveals the same quiet strategy. Do not just spend inside the culture. Own a slice of the machinery the culture runs on, so that when millions of ordinary people reach for the app or the device, a fraction of that money quietly flows back toward you. It is the difference between being a customer and being a shareholder, and he had learned to choose the second one every time. And once that instinct hardened into a system, he stopped making individual bets one at a time and started building the structures that make the bets for him. The ownership machine. This is the layer almost no highlight reel ever shows. More than a decade ago, he and his wife acquired a minority stake in the Philadelphia 76ers, joining the ownership group led by the billionaire investor Josh Harris that bought the franchise from its previous owners. Think about the symmetry of that for a second. The kid who grew up broke in West Philadelphia now owns a sliver of Philadelphia's own basketball team, a seat at the table of an entire professional sports franchise. Then, in 2018, he went further still. He co-founded a venture capital fund called Dreamers, partnering with a retired Japanese soccer star named Keisuke Honda, and built it specifically to bridge Japanese corporate capital with early-stage American startups, with a fund target reported around $100 million. He has also sat as a backer alongside other athlete investors like Kevin Durant in funds aimed at underrepresented founders. Read that arc again slowly. He is no longer the talent that other people's funds get built around. He is the fund. He is the one writing the checks, taking the equity, and deciding which founders get to build in the first place. That is the exact moment a celebrity stops being a product and becomes a principal, and he was not finished putting his own name to work. The name as an asset. In 2019, he and Jada Pinkett Smith folded the old production company into a much larger vehicle called Westbrook, Inc. Under that single roof, they gathered a film and television studio, a digital media arm, a merchandise business called Good Goods, and the talk show franchise built around his wife and family that became a cultural phenomenon in its own right and drew tens of millions of viewers. The point of Westbrook is subtle but enormous. It treats the Smith name itself as an asset to be developed, licensed, and monetized on their own terms, rather than rented out to other people's companies. He was no longer just appearing in content. He owned the company that produced it, distributed it, and sold the merchandise around it. The performer had become the platform. And the most deliberate move of all was what he chose to do with the capital once it was flowing: the legacy lever. None of this stays locked inside one family, and that is by design. Through the Will and Jada Smith Family Foundation, the couple have directed money into education, into the arts, into health, and toward programs that open doors in the entertainment industry for young people who would never otherwise find a way in. They have backed schools for the arts and put resources behind the kinds of institutions that quietly shape whether the next generation gets a shot at all. And the venture fund carries the same logic underneath the returns, because deciding which founders receive capital is one of the most powerful levers of wealth that exists. And he has consistently pointed that lever toward people the traditional gatekeepers overlooked. This is not charity in the old sense. It is architecture. It is capital sent back out into the community to compound in other people's hands, which is the truest definition of legacy there is. Which brings us, at last, to where the man actually stands today. The life now. At 57 years old, he still lives on that hillside in Calabasas, running Westbrook, still writing checks through the fund. And yes, 4 seconds on a stage in March of 2022, when he walked up and slapped a comedian at the Academy Awards, nearly detonated all of it. The ban came, and the deals paused overnight. Everyone rushed to write his professional obituary. And then, in 2024, he walked back into theaters with the 4th Bad Boys film, and it opened to more than $100 million worldwide and marched past $400 million before it was done. The empire did not just survive, it kept compounding. So, let us return to where we started and finally answer the question: 25,000 square feet, 150 acres, the private lake he dug from nothing, and a stake in an NBA team he once could only dream of watching. Because here is the thing the tabloids never printed. He owns the studio that makes his films. He owns the fund that backs the founders. He owns a piece of his hometown's basketball franchise. And he owns a stretch of California so large, so completely his own, that it does not answer to any landlord or any city hall. It answers only to him, under a zip code that belongs to no one else. He does not own a city, he owns something quieter and harder to take away: the ground itself, the equity, and the deeds. Fame gave him everything money could rent. Ownership is how he finally bought the things money can keep. So here is the real question for you. Which of these moves do you respect the most? Type 1, if it is the estate with its own zip code. Type 2, if it is the venture fund writing the checks. Type 3, if it is the stake in his hometown team. Or Type 4, if it is the simple decision, made while broke, to own instead of rent. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because next week we walk through the man who did not just buy land, he bought an entire former Army base and turned it into the biggest studio in America, Tyler Perry. And if you want to see how another icon quietly turned fame into a fortune nobody counted, that story is waiting for you on the screen right now.